Here we are. Welcome, ladies and gents, probably just gents, to your favorite podcaster's favorite podcast, the Podshit Nerdcast. I'm Brett, and this is Justin. Say hello, sir.
It is. He's not lying.
And we're here to entertain you for the next hour or so. So, I've got some things on my mind this week. A couple of things. And a couple of things that I did this week that I want to talk about. Justin's scared because he thinks that I'm going to talk about Alex Jones or something. Because I told him that I went down a rabbit hole this week. So we'll get into that in a minute. But first, I want to say yesterday I went to like this comic garage sale thing that I go to every once in a while. And it's by, this guy puts it on, named Brandon Bean. And it turns out that Justin actually knew Brandon Bean long ago. And I thought, like, because I loved the story that you told me about something that you remember, about something that happened with Bean when you worked with him. So tell us about that, because I want to hear that. I want to hear that again. I think people would think that's funny. I think it's pretty funny. I'm talking about the shaving thing.
Which story is this?
The shaving.
Oh, shit. Okay, yeah, so I had a full thick beard, and I had long hair, like longish hair, right? Like it was shaggy, as was in style back then.
Yes.
So I looked basically like a Geico caveman.
So wait, how long ago was this?
So over the weekend, I got a haircut, shaved. What?
I just asked how long ago this was.
I think it cut out.
How long ago was it?
Oh, this was 2007.
Okay.
So 11 years ago.
Okay, so full beard, kind of long hair. You look like a beatnik. And
yeah.
And then what happened? Wait. You've been working with the guy for a while, right?
Yeah, I'd been there probably 6 months.
So you'd seen...
He knew me. I knew the guy.
Had you, like, talked? Had there been conversations between you two and stuff? Like, hey, how's it going? Like...
Yeah, I mean, not really long conversations, but, I mean, enough to where, you know what, I actually got him a couple 360 games back when I was doing that, but anyways.
Oh, wow, okay. So he definitely, he definitely knew you, like, enough to know you.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
So, one weekend I got a haircut and I shaved off my beard. And it was so jarring that when I went back into work, he reintroduced himself because I was a new guy.
What was that like? Like, was it like, hey man, my name's Brandon, and welcome to the, like, what was it like? What did he say?
No, he legitimately reintroduced. Like, it probably didn't help that our shift started at like fucking 4:30 in the morning or some shit. It was like some sunrise shift thing. It was really, really early. That probably didn't help, but he really introduced himself.
All over again.
It was weird as hell. He wasn't the only one. There was multiple people that did this.
Did they figure it out, like, after, or did you say anything? Were you
Yeah, I was like, dude, I've been here for 6 months. And he was like, holy shit. Like, it just, like, it dawned on him after I told him, but...
I bet you, because I kind of want to bring that up to him. Like, I met him because he puts on this comic book sale here in Columbus. Like, every 3 months or so he has a comic book sale, and he's got this huge collection of books basically in his garage. Like, thousands and thousands of books, and he's constantly getting more and more in. And people love it, man. Like, all kinds of nerds show up and buy his fucking books. So, and I like him because he's a fucking X-Men guy. Like, when I talk to him, he's like, because I was talking to him about the Batman Dick thing, and he was like, yeah, I heard about that. He was like, I was gonna go buy one. He's like, normally I don't buy Batman. He's like, I'm not really into DC at all. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of me. Like, and the reason we first connected was, like, I was looking for Wolverine books and, like, old X-Men books, and he's like, Oh, dude, he's like, I'm an X-Men guy. Like, that's all I fucking care about. Like, more than Avengers and all the shit that's, like, popular now. He's like, I was always an X-Men guy because of the cartoon. I'm like, oh, shit, dude, that's my wheelhouse. We're like kindred spirits. But you said back when you knew him, like, you didn't realize he was, like, a fucking nerd at all. You thought, like, he was kind of like,
Well, dude, all he wanted game-wise was Call of Duty and Madden. How the fuck was I to know?
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't sound like he wasn't asking for, like, Final Fantasy and shit like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so it's kind of weird. Like, I met him as this huge fucking comic book geek nerd. And you met him and you said, like, he seemed like he might have been kind of more like a sports guy, like a kind of jock guy.
Yeah. Well, dude, he named his son Steeler after the Steelers.
I know.
He had just had a baby when I met him. His kid should be like, what, 10, 11 now?
Yeah. Steeler. Yep, I've met him.
Yeah.
That's crazy, dude. That's like Kevin Smith named his daughter Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn Smith.
Yeah.
That's crazy, dude.
So I just assumed that was the biggest thing in his life was, sports. He just seemed like a basic sports guy to me.
Yeah, he seems like...
I didn't know.
He seems like a huge Steelers fan anyway. Like, his kids all play football and shit. Like, I'm acting like I fucking hang out with the guy and drink beers on the weekends. Like, I don't know him at all like that. It's just that the interactions I've seen, and, like, I'm friends with him on Facebook, so I see that he, like, always is going to his kids. Like, he basically plans his comic sales around his kids' football season. So it's like, it's definitely a big part of his life and shit. So anyway, it's getting weird just talking about being in depth like this, but I just wanted to hear that story about when you shaved and he thought you were a brand new person. Like, I thought that was great.
Yeah.
But speaking of comics, I thought this would be a good lead-in. Like, I took notes this week of stuff I wanted to touch on. And, I figured since we'd be talking about comics, we would talk about how you and I used to write and illustrate comic books. And that's basically...
Oh, Jesus.
That's basically how we first connected, was, like, through, like, X-Men and shit. So, like...
Yeah, stealing all the printer paper.
Yes. I remember... Well, I'm a big copycat, okay? And I have no, like, qualms about admitting this. Like, this is who I am. I can't help it. Okay, when I see something that I think is awesome, I want to emulate it. So, I've just always been that way. And, like, I used to be kind of like, I don't want to let people know about that. Like, I'm a copycat. It's whatever, man. Like, I'm inspired by a certain thing, and then I want to do that, too. You know what I mean? I think that's what everybody does, but I don't know. I was weird about admitting that. Anyway... even to this day, I'm still like that. Like, people that do podcasts inspire me to want to do a podcast, right? It wasn't like I just always wanted to do it. I saw other people doing it. I'm like, dude, I think that looks like fun. It looks like something I could do. And all they're doing is bullshitting with their friends. I can do that. I think it'd be fun. But, so that's how you and I kind of became friends. Like, I noticed you drawing little tiny comic strips of, like, X-Men. Like, I remember you drew this picture of a Sentinel with, like, the X-Men all attacking it, like 5 different X-Men that you drew, like a little storm, and there was a little Wolverine, like, climbing up the Sentinel, and there was, like Cyclops was shooting at its leg or something. Like, it was, you drew this giant Sentinel and all these tiny little X-Men. And I remember seeing that and just being like, holy shit, because at the time I liked comics. Like, I had just gotten into comics. I was really into the X-Men TV show. And I had just gotten into comics. And then I saw you drawing comics. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even think... I never realized that people could just draw comics. Like, people can just draw fucking comics. You didn't have to just be a consumer of them. You could make them yourself. And it was the first time I realized that. So then I saw you made a comic cover one time. And I don't think you were, like, trying to do a whole comic or anything. You just wanted to draw a comic cover. Like, you drew, like, the X-Men or whatever it was, and then you had it like, and there was different ones. And you drew, like, this character you had called Vampire X, and you drew him, and you had like even the little like rectangle up in the left-hand corner that had like the price of the comic and shit, and the name of the comics was JL Comics, and the J and the L looked like little boots, like little superhero boots. And I thought that was the coolest fucking thing ever. And so I totally copycatted. I'm like, dude, I want to make comics too. I want to do that. So I started making comics as well. And clearly mine was BS Comics, and it was like, it's funny now when I think about it, but it was a total copycat thing to do. But that spawned kind of our relationship, like where we were both into the same thing, and then we started drawing stuff together. That was probably after the Orenthal thing. Like, I don't really want to go into that whole thing. That was kind of weird. But we actually met because we lived basically...
you can't mention it and then say it was weird and then not come back.
Okay, so basically we lived right down the street from one another. I don't think we knew that we lived right down the street from each other till one day I was walking past his house and he was outside rollerblading. And I don't know why, but I just wanted to fuck with him. Like, now I look back and it seems really super gay. It seems super gay, like I was flirting. That's what it felt like a fucking what you would do when you're flirting with a girl. So that's why I'm like, it's kind of weird. I don't want to mention it, but it was just like, it was weird to bump into someone from school and then, but you want to be friends with them, but you don't know how to act. It's the same type of thing. So, we started playing this game. I guess it was a game. I don't know. But he was on rollerblades and he was trying to like go up this muddy hill on rollerblades, and I kept shoving him down the hill so that he couldn't get up. It was like King of the Mountain type thing. And he was trying to get up the hill. I was pushing him down, and I kept calling him Orenthal because this was like in the era of the O.J. Simpson trial, and I thought the name Orenthal was hilarious. So I'm like pushing Justin down, like, Orenthal, and I'm pushing him down the hill, and he's trying to get up the hill, and we both think it's absolutely hilarious. Anyway, that's how we first met, but then we became kind of friends, I think, because of the comic book thing, because of the X-Men TV series, probably more than anything. And then that spawned into, like, us. It all came from that, though, like, drawing. It came from drawing. That's how our friendship started, and then evolved into, like, we made comics where I had BS Comics, he had JL Comics, and then we did a crossover event that was BS JL Comics. It was kind of like the DC Marvel crossover at the time, where we pit our characters against his. Mine were complete rip-off, knockoffs of the X-Men, and his were all original. That's just the way it was. But I don't know, I thought that was cool that like comic books were our thing, and I wanted to tell that story of how we had BS JL Comics.
No, I think the biggest part you had issue with is, like, you saw the feet as the letters, and you just realized that BS cannot make feet, and you're like, fuck, what am I gonna do?
Yeah, it can't make anything. It can't make fucking anything. There's nothing you can make with BS besides BS. Like, I think it's funny that it's BS and it's literally BS. You can't do shit with it. There's nothing you can do with those letters. It's like you can make the B boobs and the S a snake. Or like you can make the B, I don't know, what could the B be? I have no idea. But yeah, and it looks stupid, and I use like these stupid gothic bubble letters. I did want to talk about our characters though, like our main characters. I want to talk about that. Are you still there?
Yeah, my camera, it says malfunctioned and it turned it off. That's probably just the government popping in.
Yeah, more than likely. Okay, well,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it seems to work better anyway when we're not on camera, so we'll just do it this way.
Okay.
But I did want to talk about like our franchise characters that we came up with. Like, I did actually have an original character. Like, yeah, he's a knockoff of someone else, but what character isn't? But we both had our marquee characters. You had Vampire X, and I want you to talk about Vampire X a little bit.
but see, that's the whole thing. Like, there wasn't much there. It was like, it'd be cool if it was just a guy that was a vampire, but he just ate bad guys. Like, it wasn't even, I mean, I guess in 5th grade that's pretty deep, but that's sort of how deep it went.
Hold on, did he eat vampires?
What?
He ate vampires?
That was the plan. I don't know if I ever drew him eating vampires, but yeah.
No, so he's basically like Blade. So yours was kind of a knockoff too. He's like a vampire who hunts vampires.
But to be fair, I don't even think the movies were out then.
No, they weren't.
Not the first one yet.
I don't think they were. No. Blade, no, definitely not. Definitely not. I think Blade came out a few years later.
Yeah.
But that was the character. Blade had been on the Spider-Man cartoon, which was out at the time. Yeah. So Vampire X was this vampire. I thought he was cool as shit because he was an all original. That was the first time I realized, like, oh shit, we can make original characters that are all our own. And it was because of Justin. Justin introduced me to originality, which I took that and I completely bastardized it. Like, I made my first comic, he had Vampire X, and my first comic was called Futuristic X-Men. It was literally X-Men 2099 mixed with, like, X-Men Age of Apocalypse. Like, because literally in X-Men Age of Apocalypse, Beast had metal legs. Now, to my credit, I had never read Age of Apocalypse series at that point. Like, I just gave Beast metal legs because I thought that's what would happen to him in the future. Turned out, in an alternate reality, yes, that's exactly what happens to him. But anyway, yeah, I completely bastardized the idea of making my own characters. But I did have one guy that was my guy. Like, you had Vampire X as your main guy, and I had a character called Stretch. And Stretch was the result of falling into a pit of, like, radioactive acidic chemicals at this, like, plant. This plant had been dumping them into this, like, pond out back or something. He was this abused child. I don't know if this was supposed to, like, I don't know, people write stuff and it's supposed to be, like, indicative of their own experiences or whatever. I wasn't, like, heavily abused or anything like that, but my parents were kind of pieces of shit sometimes. But not to this extent. Like, this guy had been, like, continually beaten by his dad and shit, and he, so my backstory was probably a little deeper than Vampire X's, but he, Vampire X Stretch fell into this giant vat of, plasma fucking goo radioactive shit, and it basically melted all of his skin off, and he was almost like this, he was almost skeletal, but he still had skin, but it was like, it was pitch white. It was just like, he was pale as can be. His teeth were like all rotten down to points. Like, they weren't points, they were rotten down, and he had sharpened them to points. And he had like red eyes. It was absolutely ridiculous, but his power is just like Mr. Fantastic. He could stretch his limbs to ridiculous, stupid lengths. But unlike Mr. Fantastic, he was a little more insane. He was insane, and he would, like, plunge his hands through people's bodies because his fingers were also, like, sharpened to pointy fucking nails. And, yeah, he was kind of a dark character. Anyway, I wanted to share that. I wanted to share our nerdy comic past, because I'm realizing, like, we talk about pop culture stuff on here sometimes, but we don't go full nerd. And I figured if we talked about comic books a little bit, it would be right in line with the name of the podcast.
Yeah, I like how mine's oh yeah, he's a vampire that eats vampires, and you're just like, this guy was abused and he sharpened his fucking fingers to rip people in half.
Look, dude, I told you, I'm already feeling a little, like, less than because I'm such a copycat. I never would have drawn my own character if you hadn't made Vampire X. So, but I'm already feeling like this guy who always just copies off of other people. And so I had to really make him a deep character. And I had to broadcast that right now because otherwise I'm just the guy that copies shit. I don't want to be that. Although I don't mind. Like I said, the older I get, the more I'm realizing everybody's copying off someone. Like, the comic book cover that you drew back then that I thought was so original, it's like, well, it was literally every comic book cover ever. You know what I mean? That's what you were emulating.
Yeah, there's a formula for, like, fucking everything. Especially with The Simpsons being on this long, The Simpsons already did it at some point. No matter what story you want to tell. Between The Simpsons, Star Trek, Twilight Zone, something, everything's already been told.
Yeah, that's what's so crazy, dude. Like, we were talking about that, too, last week, how everything's already been done. Like, literally, you came up with something, and we're like, yeah, there's no way that one's been done. And then I found it. I found it that week just by chance. It wasn't even I was searching for it. I found a movie that described almost the exact plot that you came up with that was ridiculous. You're like, these people, they like go into a room and all of a sudden they're in another dimension where everything's different. Now, like, it just so happened that this movie came out on Netflix the same week where that exactly happened, except it was a closet. Like, I think you said a bathroom, but this was a closet. Did you ever watch that?
No, I didn't watch it. I remember you sent me a link to it.
Yeah, basically, if I send you a link, it guarantees that you will not watch it, ever. You will never see what I send you. I don't know why. I should just tell you about stuff and then check up every once in a while, because I know if I send it to you, I assume, like, I've done my part. I've sent him the link. All he has to do is push the link. But, literally, that's the exact opposite that it achieves. If I send you a link, there's no way you're ever going to enjoy it.
I'm just going to avoid it, like, now it doesn't exist. You're like, hey, don't watch this.
I might as well.
I'm like, done.
I might as well do that.
Hey, wait, did you watch that Overwatch, or what is it?
Overlord
thing?
Yeah, Overlord.
Looked pretty good.
I watched that trailer last night, dude. Yeah, because I watch the shit you send me, goddammit. I don't avoid it like the plague. You send me stuff, the first chance I get, I watch it, because I care about what you care
I forget, and then you say something else, and it gets pushed up, and by the time you've said, like, 8 things, that shit's way in the past. I forgot all about it.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest, I gotta be fair. I send you, like, 7 links a day, minimum. And it's really hard to keep up. Like, you don't have the type of job I have, where I can, like, listen to podcasts all day and find out about shit, and, like I get stuck places and I can watch an episode of a show or a movie and tell you about it. Like, I expect too much, I think. I think I expect too much from you.
Dude, like, I'm trying to detangle, like, fucking, I have, like, a rat nest of cords behind the station. I'm like, oh, god damn it. That's why this one's not working. It's been half plugged in for this whole time. That's why I gotta wiggle the cord every time I'm gonna image this. So I gotta pull all this shit out. Like, and every time you send me something, I'm in the middle of something like that. It's like always the worst possible timing.
Yeah, you're just such a busy guy.
No, I'm not. Like, there's times that I'm doing basically jack shit, but that's never when you send me the link.
Right, but that's the thing. That's the time when you're supposed to go, oh yeah, Brett sent me 16 links today. I'll go through those with my free time. Like, that's the time you choose to do that. Like, fuck your family, dude. Just watch the stuff I send you. Like, when you're free and your kid's like, Daddy, play with me, you'd be like, hold on. I need to watch. Brett sent me a link to this movie I've never even heard of. I gotta watch that real quick.
Yeah, I'll push you after the movie.
Yeah. Exactly. One other thing. See, I was talking about stuff that, like, inspires me and stuff. And I'm basically going to consume this entire podcast with my shit because I wrote notes and I want to talk about them. I went down this podcast rabbit hole this week. That's the rabbit hole I went down. If you didn't, like, those were most of the links I sent you this week were links to podcasts. Because I discovered, like, all these crazy podcasts. Okay. So it started with, the first podcast I ever really listened to was probably Rogan, like 2 years ago or something. I wasn't really into podcasts before that. And then from Rogan, like, I'd always liked Kevin Smith movies and shit like that, and like hearing him talk or whatever, but I had no idea he was like the fucking kingpin of fucking podcasting and shit. Okay, I had no idea anything about that. But when I saw him on Rogan, I watched, like, the first time he was on Rogan, and I think it was about 2 years ago. It was like when I first started watching. I saw him on Rogan, and I found out from that I think it was actually in the, like, I was watching that, and you know it has suggested videos underneath it when you're watching a video. There was suggested Fat Man on Batman, which is his podcast with Mark Bernardin, where they just talk fucking nerd shit, movies and pop culture and comic books. Like, so I watched that one time, and then I'm like, oh, I fucking love this, right? Like, this is amazing. And it was a big part of inspiring me to want to do this podcast with you. I'm like, this is just two guys talking about fucking nerd shit and pop culture and movies and stuff, and people love it. And it seems like a lot of fun. Well, so I watched that for a while. I'm watching basically Rogan and Fat Man on Batman. But this past week, through Fat Man on Batman, I realized how many podcasts Kevin Smith has. Not only is he on like 6 podcasts a week of his own with different people each day. Like, he does a podcast a day, at least, with a different person, with a different theme. And then on top of that, he has this whole podcast network that goes out, like, that spawned a bunch of other podcasts. So one of his most popular ones is Tell 'em Steve Dave. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Okay, it's called Tell 'em Steve Dave. And that's the one I was telling you about. It's not featuring Kevin Smith, but it never would have happened without him. Okay? Tell 'em Steve Dave is it's the comic book men, right? Oh wait, hold on, let me back up. First of all, Kevin Smith has a podcast called Smodcast, and this is the one that started them all. Like, this was out before Rogan had a podcast. This was like it was like 2007 he started Smodcast. No one was doing podcasts. And Smodcast is him and the guy that produced Clerks with him. It's eluding me at the moment. Scott Mosier. Okay, so Kevin Smith and Scott Mosier have this thing called Smodcast. Well, Smodcast spawned the Smodcast Network. And the Smodcast Network is like a bunch of podcasts all on the Smodcast like network, okay? So there was Smodcast with Kevin Smith and Scott Mosier. And that spawned Tell 'em Steve Dave. And Tell 'em Steve Dave is the two guys from Comic Book Men, which is Brian Johnson and Walt Flanagan. But along with them is Brian Quinn from Impractical Jokers. And what's crazy is, like I said, it's a rabbit hole. So I start listening to this Tell 'em Steve Dave. And I still don't know why it's called that. Like, I should figure that out. It's those three: Brian Quinn, Walt Flanagan, Brian Johnson. And from that, there's like these other offshoots. And I realized, like, these all started a good, like, 7-8 years ago. Like, they started, I think Tell 'em Steve Dave started in like 2011 or 12 or something. Like, when Comic Book Men was very new, when Impractical Jokers was in its first season, is when this stuff started. So Impractical Jokers wasn't even a thing yet. Impractical Jokers wasn't even a thing. But Brian Quinn was on this show, and they had been around forever. The Impractical Jokers, this is what I found out on my rabbit hole diving. The Impractical Jokers have been they're not the Impractical Jokers. They're actually called the Tenderloins. And it's a thing that's been going on for fucking ever. Like, back in the MySpace days, they were one of the most popular comedy searches on MySpace. the Tenderloins. The Tenderloins became the Impractical Jokers, and they actually still tour as the Tenderloins. Anyway, so Tell 'em Steve Dave is this show. All this is spawned by Kevin Smith, but it also, like, it's like this web that meets together. The Impractical Jokers as well. So you got Brian Quinn. I'm listening to Fat Man on Batman. From that, I find out about Smodcast. So I go listen to Smodcast. From Smodcast, I find out about Tell 'em Steve Dave. I go listen to Tell 'em Steve Dave. And I'm like really into each one, right? Like for a solid 2 days, I'm listening to only that podcast. That's it. I'm like, oh shit, Tell 'em Steve Dave is the shit. And I listen to that a good like 6 episodes. I'm wasting hours of driving time just listening to that. But then, like, I hear Brian Quinn on Tell 'em Steve Dave. He mentions, oh yeah, I've been trying to start this. This was like an old episode of Tell 'em Steve Dave. And he goes, I've been trying to get my buddy to do this podcast with me. He's my other friend from Impractical Jokers, Sal Volcano. He's like, we've been trying to start a podcast for a long time. He's like, the Tenderloins have a podcast, but they never want to actually record. They never show up to do it. They never find the time for it. He's like, but I feel like me and Sal could do it. Okay, so then I search, or I found out that they actually did start one. It was called What Say You? The What Say You podcast. So I look up the What Say You podcast from there. I go from Tell 'em Steve Dave to What Say You. So far, I have now found my favorite podcast of all of them. And it's the What Say You podcast. The sad part about the What Say You podcast is they have not made a new episode in over a year. Like this, I guess this is what happens. Like, Tell 'em Steve Dave is still going strong. But Brian Quinn and Sal from Impractical Jokers, they had their own podcast from like the end of 2013 up until last year. Like all of 2013, 2014, they ran strong. Every single week they made a podcast, and it was like part of their like whole spiel. They're like, we're gonna make sure that we're gonna do everything we can. Like, they did one of the podcasts from the emergency room because Sal had some sort of fucking super migraine and was in the hospital or whatever, but they made it happen regardless, and like no matter what, right? This is one of the greatest podcasts I've ever listened to, and this is the one that more than anything inspires this podcast. Like now, like I told you, I'm a copycat, so right now I see what they're doing, or what they did. It's not even what they're doing anymore, and it's sad, because I want to see them keep doing it. Basically, for a year, they ran super strong. Then it started getting spaced out. They do one a month, and then it became one every 6 months. And in 2017, I think they did 2 the entire year. And they haven't done one since. 71 episodes is what they did. And now I don't even want to tell you. It's almost ridiculous how obsessed I became in the past week with the What Say You podcast. But I listened to it. I listened to probably 40 episodes of What Say You podcast this week. Like, that's how much time I've spent listening to this thing. So I went down this ridiculous rabbit hole. Like I said, it started with Rogan. It went to Kevin Smith. It went from Kevin Smith to Smodcast to Tell 'em Steve Dave to What Say You, and I've been on What Say You all week, obsessed with it, and now I'm sad that I only have a few episodes left. Anyway, that's it. I'm sure that was really boring, but that was my...
Did you listen to all of them, like from fucking 2013 through 2017?
No, I'm getting there though. I think the feed cut out for a minute, but I've listened to about half of them. They have 71 episodes, and I've listened to 30 something.
How long are they on average?
Just over an hour.
So you put like 30 some hours into this already?
Yes, that's what I'm telling you.
In a week?
Yes, that's what I'm.
Holy shit!
That's what I'm telling you. and that's why I had to send you, like, do you remember the other day I sent you one? I was like, now this is a podcast story.
Yeah, I actually remember getting that, and then I remember doing a bunch of shit, and then it being gone.
Yeah, you have to listen to that. It'll suck you in. You'll want to listen to every episode after that because, like, Sal is a fucking amazing storyteller. Ridiculous, amazing storyteller. And I had no idea. I had no idea he had that in him. But anyway, it sucked me in. That's my story. I got sucked into this fucking What Say You podcast. Now I'm depressed because I'm over halfway through the episodes, but I know that they end at 71. I know that these guys don't regularly make this podcast anymore. It makes me fucking sad because it was the perfect thing. Like, I went through all these different podcasts, finally found one that was like, I felt was the perfect podcast for me, and then I find out, god damn it, they gave up on it. Anyway, that's it. We're a little bit over halfway through ours, so what?
It's just like everything, like Lennon talks about everything she likes, they discontinue, like food-wise, shows, anything. So if she likes something, she tries to not admit that she likes it now.
Yeah, fuck that. I'll just be depressed. Look, I think what's cool is these guys still tour together. Like the Impractical Jokers tour, the Tenderloins, whatever you want to call them, they still tour on regular. Like, I think they're in Cincinnati like this week. I want to go see these guys live now, though. Like, this podcast did its trick. I'm obsessed with not the Impractical Jokers, which I do love, but those personalities outside of that show, where they're like raw and raunchy and cussing and like talking shit. Like, I fucking love these. I love these guys. Like, I want to hang out with them. And I'm sure, like, in 6 months it'll be a new set of people that I'm obsessed with, because that's how I work. Like, I get really obsessed with certain things. I absolutely love it. I want to emulate it, and then it becomes something else. But anyway, that's my whole fucking rabbit hole story. I'm sure this is probably gonna be our weakest podcast because I wasted like fucking 20 minutes on that.
But that's how a rabbit hole works. Even telling about a rabbit hole is in itself a rabbit hole.
Yeah, exactly. But so this week's top 5, we've decided, and I'll put it on me. I decided what this one was gonna be. So if it's a failure, it's my fault. Along with the rabbit hole, this whole thing will go down in flames, and I will literally call this one like our worst podcast. Like, that'll be the title. My plan was for us to pick. Okay, originally it was for us to pick our 5 favorite Jim Carrey films. And Justin was like, let's not maybe do films, maybe let's do characters, because there's a lot of characters that are great, but they span several movies, and sometimes, like, the movie wasn't that great, but the character was still great. So it maybe, and if you take into account, like, In Living Color and stuff like that, there's a lot more characters to choose from, too. So we decided to do our top 5 Jim Carrey characters this week. And Justin has actually been putting his together on the fly, or is right now putting them together, so guess we'll see how that works out. Kind of like what I did.
I've already got it. It's already done.
You did it that quickly, huh? Did you do it? Did you do it during my podcast story?
No, I actually did it before we even started.
I would have done it during my podcast story. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't realize how fucking boring that was gonna be till I started actually speaking. But hopefully it inspires some people to go check out these fucking other podcasts, which is not my job. It's not my job on this podcast of 20 listeners to fucking promote podcasts that have like thousands of listeners and win awards based on their podcast. Like, for some reason I feel like it's my job to promote them. Alright. I've got my list here. You've got your list done. I think I went first last time, didn't I? Or did you?
I don't remember.
Have you went first?
It's just like all the links you send me, I just don't remember.
Have you went first every time?
I got like the short-term memory of a goldfish.
Alright, fuck it. I think you should go first because I've been talking so goddamn much. I just want to listen for a little bit.
Alright.
Okay.
Here we go.
Alright.
So, I put mine 5-1 because one, I can actually put things in order and I can say this is much more important or better or liked it better than the other.
Yeah,
so Justin. I can praise something and then immediately turn around and shit on it a little bit.
Yes,
and I'm
Justin.
fine with that.
Yes, Justin. You're better than me in every single way, even in the listing of your favorite things. I'm incapable. You were all capable. Continue.
See that? Everything was great, and then I shit on you a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right.
Oh, man.
Continue. We're all listening. We want to hear your fucking infinite wisdom.
Alright then. So, number 5 is... You know what would be fun? Also,
wait.
I'll tell you the movie.
Okay.
But some of these you have to try to remember the movie. So, number 5 is Dick Harper.
Dick Harper?
Yep. Dick Harper.
Wait. So, is that Eternal Sunshine?
Nope.
Okay, then I have no idea. That's crazy. What is this? The vampire movie?
It's Fun with Dick and Jane.
Oh my god, I forgot about that film completely.
Dude, I loved that movie. Like, it was just something about he did really well with going from being rich to then having nothing and freaking the fuck out. That was just really good.
Oh, I gotta modify my list. Oh shit. There was 2 movies I completely forgot about. One is that one, and then somehow, I completely forgot about Me, Myself, and Irene.
I mean, I didn't forget about it, but it didn't make my list.
Really? It didn't make your list?
It didn't make my... Like, okay, he was good in that, but what was better was his kids were better in that than him, I feel like.
That's true.
Some of the gags were good, but I mean, character-wise, I liked his kids better than him, just because it was so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, they probably got the most laughs. I really liked when he fucking turned into the fucking dickhead, though. Like, I fucking loved that. Like, especially when we first saw it, like, people weren't doing that all the time. Like, now it's a thing. You see it in movies all the time. People being complete dickheads. And they don't even have a disorder. They're just dickheads. But that shit was good. I loved it.
Alright.
Go ahead.
So number 4 is Fletcher Reed. What movie is that?
That's Liar Liar, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. And then 3rd is Ace Ventura.
Really? Alright, so hold on. Fletcher Reed, though, let's talk about what's some of your favorite things about Fletcher Reed. Because I originally had him on my list. I think I changed it. Yeah, I took him off my list because you said we're going to do characters, not movies. And now, if we would have done movies, I think Liar Liar might have been number 1 on my list, just because of how, it's not iconic or whatever, but as a fucking movie, as a movie that made me, laugh the entire fucking time through, Liar Liar was the best I had seen. Like, in 1997, did we see that together? I think we did. I think that was the last one.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was another thing I wanted to talk about here, is that you and I made a pact. We made a pact back in 96-ish, right? I think, did we see When Nature Calls together?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I think we might have seen Cable Guy together, which was 96. And then we saw Liar Liar together. And we made this pact that for the rest of our fucking lives, we were going to see every Jim Carrey movie together I mean, of course, we were fucking 6th graders at the time. But we made this pact that we wouldn't see it with anyone else. It was you and me, we were the Jim Carrey guys, and we were going to see every Jim Carrey movie ever made together. That all changed as soon as fucking Truman Show came, and I ended up seeing it with my friend Sean. And I'm sure you saw it with someone else.
Yeah.
So, it's sad. It's sad. But I think if he ever comes out with a film ever again, well, and we live in the same state again, maybe we can start that tradition back up. Anyway, yeah. So you changed things on me, so I made Liar Liar not on my list at all because we aren't doing movies. So what would you say? Fletcher Reed is your number 4? And
yeah.
Number 3, you have Ace Ventura. Let's talk about Ace.
Just because it's just his classic, like what you'd expect from him, and without that, you really wouldn't. I don't know. He would lose some of his identity without that. So I feel like that was just needed.
Yeah, he wouldn't have spawned. I don't think he would have spawned any of the other movies, if not for Ace Ventura.
All right.
Like we would have never gotten.
And so now
What?
Yeah.
I was gonna say we would have never gotten The Mask, and we would have never gotten, like Cable Guy, any of that shit, if Ace Ventura wasn't like a hit. Yeah. So go ahead.
So number 2, I have Fire Marshal Bill.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because I would fucking snort laugh watching that. Like, it was just too much.
That Fire Marshal Bill was in Living Color. It was one of his recurring characters on A Living Color.
Yeah. Like, he do that thing where he doesn't have lips, and then, like, his teeth would be, like, it was just too much. Like, I remember the one where he jammed his hand in the meat grinder and, like, started twisting it, and the shit came out. Oh,
yes,
dude, it was,
yes.
Okay, it was great.
Dude, I love it. I remember I actually bought the first and second season of In Living Color when it came out on DVD. It was like a big deal because I hadn't seen it since I was a little kid. But that was that's one of the reasons I fell in love with Jim Carrey. I never would have seen Ace Ventura if it wasn't for Fire Marshal Bill. So was that number 2?
That was number 2.
So we're at the big fucking number 1, your all-time favorite. Nothing even comes close.
It is, and I feel like you already know.
Jim Carrey character.
It's Lloyd Christmas.
Oh, you son of a bitch. Okay.
It has to be. I mean, that's just watching the movie, the soundtrack, everything about it just puts you in 1994.
Yeah.
I think that's when it came out, 94. Like, it's just perfect.
Yeah, and that's, like you said, that's, if not for Ace Ventura, we don't even get that movie. But something about that one stands out, man. Like, something, maybe even if it wasn't the perfect movie, it probably wouldn't have been an iconic character. You know what I mean? Like, if Jeff Daniels wasn't also fucking amazing in that, or if, like you said, the soundtrack wasn't fucking incredible, like, to this day, those songs from the soundtrack of Dumb and Dumber will pop into my head while I'm driving. Do you get that?
Yeah.
You're just like driving along or whatever, you're like going throughout your day, and it's like, the man went over the mountain to see what he could see. You remember that?
Yeah.
Or like, what's the oh man, there's just so many good fucking songs, and like every scene is accompanied with a song to intro it. And if I watch the movie, I can't do it right now, but like if I were to watch the film, I can start singing the song before it plays. That's how many times I watched that thing over and over. Great fucking movie. Amazing character, dude.
And the crazy thing is, like, Truman didn't even make the list. But I love the movie. That might be my favorite movie, but Truman didn't make the list.
Yeah, you know what's funny is, like, when we were talking about this before, we don't like sharing what our list is going to be before we get on the actual podcast, but you said something like, we both know it's Truman Burbank. Or maybe you said we both know it's Truman Show if we were talking about movies. Is that what you meant? Yeah. I don't know if I would have put it. Honestly, I probably would have put your favorite character as the best movie, in my opinion. Like Dumb and Dumber probably would have been it, just because. But okay. Truman Burbank did not make your list. Let's find out about my list, sir.
Alrighty.
All right.
Bring it.
All right. At number 5. This one was really hard for me. I don't know it. I don't know for sure. But look, I had Fire Marshal Bill as my number 5. But I kept going back and forth, like that, or the character he played in the I don't remember what the name was, but it was. You remember that Fist That Rocks the Cradle skit on In Living Color?
Yeah.
Where he played like because it's crazy. It applies to like today. Like it so coincides with like the society we live in today, that the stuff they got away with on that show that everyone thought was so ridiculous and funny is like the world we're living in today, that no one is allowed to find funny. Like, he was basically a transitioning fucking, was it a woman that was becoming, no, it was a man that became a woman. Pretty sure. No, it was a woman, that's right. This character was a woman that was on a bunch of testosterone and stuff, and she was like a pro bodybuilder. And she was,
I remember that.
And she was the new nanny for this family. It was the funniest fucking thing ever. I don't know. I guess that's just an honorable mention, because Fire Marshal Bill was more like recurring. You saw him a lot more. I think Fire Marshal Bill is my number 5 for sure. I just had to mention the other one as well, because whenever I think of In Living Color, those are the two characters that really stand out. Alright. Number 4, a character that did not make your list, but I could not fucking mention Truman Burbank. And maybe it's because of the movie, but I feel like it was our first glance at Jim Carrey trying a more dramatic role. Like, there was tons of comedy in it as well, but it was supposed to be a more dramatic role. Like, they advertised it, you know, they talked about it on TV and movies and shit, or in magazines and shit, as Jim Carrey's basically first try at drama, right? And I loved it, dude. Like, I loved him. I thought it was, and like I think we were talking about the other day, it was way ahead of its time. Like, it was a look at what was going to actually happen. Like, at the time we had like Real World, and that was basically it, I think. Like, that was it when it came to reality TV. But this was way ahead of its time. This was like, they would almost make this movie now. You know what I mean? Like, a movie about a guy who didn't know that his entire life was just a fucking TV show. Like,
it's kind of implausible now, though. It's like we all know.
Right. But if you would but they could make it work now. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, now it'd almost be normal. We'd almost just all accept it. It wouldn't be this crazy thing. It'd be like, oh yeah, they're filming this kid growing up. Like, literally, they already do it. They already do it. Like, there's YouTubers who show their kids from fucking birth up to now, like age 10, and they have filmed most of their lives. And that, of course, that kid is aware of it, but it's not much different. It's not much different at all. It's like filming someone without their consent. They just took it to the ultimate extreme in The Truman Show. I don't know. I thought he did a really good job at his first like attempt at a dramatic role. When I saw it, I've always been a fucking really sensitive person, like a fucking romantic. So when I watched that movie, I remember like tearing up, and I still do when I see the fucking end scene when he's like, and it's supposed to be almost comedic. I remember laughing when I saw it when he hits the wall.
That moment is like just when his brain explodes. That's fucking great.
Yeah, but I remember getting that pins and needles feeling and like almost tearing up when he hits it, and then like he realizes something. You know, it's like it just hits him. That scene fucking got me, man. Even as a kid, when I saw it, it got me. And then now, rewatching it, it still gets me. It's like when I watched The Shawshank Redemption. When he fucking, like, when the warden throws the rock and it goes through the poster, at that moment, my body goes pins and needles and, like, tears start to well up. It's like, because I don't cry over, like, sentimental things, but I cry over, like, stuff that gets me emotional is like when something is a huge moment or something is super ironic or super fucking big, it like surprises you. That gets me for some reason. That's my favorite thing in movies. Like Shawshank Redemption is probably one of my favorite movies of all time because of that. The whole build and then that moment. And then The Truman Show did that with that fucking, like him puncturing that wall was like the warden puncturing that poster with the rock. That's what it feels like to me. Anyway, Truman Burbank. It's my number 4. Number 3, we've already talked about it a lot, is Ace Ventura. I had to do Ace Ventura. And both movies were fantastic. I think the first one was better. But, like you said, it's just like, it's classic Jim Carrey. Like, when you think Jim Carrey, someone says Jim Carrey, probably the first thing that pops into your head is an image of Ace Ventura. Almost instantly. Am I right?
Yep. With that hair, it's the first thing you think about.
Yeah, it was funny. I posted a picture a while back of me. I had straightened my hair, and I tried to make it like Wolverine's hair. But the first thing someone says when they saw the little horns was like, dude, you look like Ace Ventura. You look like White Devil, White Devil. I'm like, yes, I do. You're exactly right. But that's like the first thing that popped into their heads, and even mine. I'm like, I'm trying to be Wolverine, but he really kind of looks like White Devil. Number 2, didn't make your list either. But I think it's one of Jim Carrey's best roles, and I think it's honestly one of the best movies, like one of the ones I quote more than anything, and that's Cable Guy. I love the Cable Guy, and I was going to list all of his names here, but he doesn't actually have a name in that film. If you,
I would just go with Chip Douglas.
Yeah, but that's not
what
it.
I remember.
That's the thing.
I know.
I was going to go with Chip Douglas, and then he changes it again, right? Later in the movie, he's like, wait, what is your real name? And he says something else. I don't remember what it is now, though. Like, he says it, and then he kind of dismisses it. He's like, it's this and this, but that's not the point. So I'm just going to call him the Cable Guy, because that's what his actual character is. He's not any of those other things that he made up. The Cable Guy was another one that was like, it was this weird, it was different than anything we had ever seen from Jim Carrey. And actually, it was different, I think, than most of the things we had seen in cinema, period. Like, it was dark comedy. It was absolutely ridiculous and hilarious, like in a Jim Carrey manner, but it actually had some like dark overtones where you like actually, it was almost I wouldn't say scary, but you know what I mean, it was like, I don't know, it was like Swim Fan before Swim Fan existed. It was like about a fucking stalker. And it was kind of creepy in that way, but it was absolutely the most comedic take you could ever have on a stalker. That movie is so fucking, it's up there with Dumb and Dumber for me in terms of like, same thing with the soundtrack. I actually owned the Cable Guy soundtrack. I thought it was amazing. Where I can like go right into song with each scene that changes, and that's another movie that I can quote probably all the way through. And I didn't appreciate it at the time. I remember seeing it in 96 at the drive-in. I think it was at the drive-in. And, yeah, it was fine or whatever, but I thought the other ones were so much better. But the more the years went by, the more I realized, like, that movie is special, dude. Like, a lot of his movies are special. Like, they're different than anything else. So, I don't know. I love The Cable Guy. 100%. I'm so, like, I think that I do quote that more than any. I say things with a lisp all the time. And it's literally trying to be Jim Carrey's character from Cable Guy. Like, you stupid son of a bitch. Like...
And you have so many chances to say that on a daily basis.
Dude, the thing is like, dude, people, if I hear the name Steven, I have to go, Steven? Steven? My lisp is gone! Like, I have to do Steven with the SH at the beginning, like, enunciate it. If anyone is named Steven in my presence, so. Yeah, big part of my fucking life, part of my lexicon. On a daily basis, shit reminds me of that movie. So, alright, number 1. This is nothing surprising at all. I agree with you 100% with your number 1, Lloyd Christmas. He had to be number 1. I think this was a good thing because I think we got some different stuff on the list. That was pretty good. Wasn't quite as different as last week's list. Like last week we had wildly different. I think we had wildly different ideas of what we could do, and it was such a broad spectrum. Like you could pick from anything. So, but I think this ended up pretty good. Like we had some of the same stuff, but most of them were in different places. But we both wholeheartedly agree that Lloyd Christmas is probably the most iconic, most memorable, probably most quoted, and probably funniest character in one of the best Jim Carrey movies ever made. So I'm in 100% agreement with you on that. That's another one that, if there's anything I quote more than Cable Guy, it's probably Dumb and Dumber. Like, I don't know how many times I've said in my life, so you're telling me there's a chance. Like how
my favorite is just to say, do you realize what you've done?
Do you realize what you've done? Dude, I like to say, I will take it so far. Like, if someone says something that reminds me of that movie, I will keep going, like, several scenes down the road with my quote to back it up. Like, if they're like, if someone says, like, say we've been looking for the remote all day, right? And I'm like, hey, check it out, look what I found. And he was like, where'd you find that? I'm like, oh shit. I have to go into, like, some kid back in town traded the van for it straight up. I can get 80 miles to the gallon on this hog. Still want to go to Aspen? Yeah, you know it. Like, and I'll keep it going. I can do that. Like, I think I've watched it more than any other movie. I had it on VHS, and I wore it the fuck out. I watched that more than anything.
Yeah.
Close to...
It's weird to consider that, that you, could actually wear out a VHS. And it's kind of telling which VHSs you wore out. Like, that's just next level.
Yeah, because, I mean, I wonder if there's got to be somewhere, because the internet says everything, right? There's got to be a, like a list or something that tells how many times you can play a VHS on average before it gives out. I'm going to have to look that up now. Like, I have to look it up. It's ridiculous. I think, you know what? I'm going to look it up right now. I'm going to look it up, and we're going to talk about it for a minute. Hold on. Go ahead. Keep talking.
Jamie, look into it.
Well, see, this is a thing. This is one of the things I actually got from the What Say You podcast, is that when they were talking about shit, they would talk about something like, I wonder about that, and then they would look it up, and it would spawn a whole new fucking conversation. Like, it's ridiculous. One of the episodes, they went into something, they're like, hey, let's look that up. And as soon as the guy started typing, like, what is the most? You know how all the suggestions come up? Like, when you type in, like, what is the most, there'll be, like, 10 suggestions that pop up, like, what is the most, blah, 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 what is the most, blah, blah, blah. And they talked about, the guy who was looking up was like, all right, I want you to try to guess the top 10, what is the most, and finish the sentence things. And, like, they went on that for, like, half an hour. So, it made me realize that looking stuff up is kind of fun. So, how many times can you look up, or can you watch a VHS? I have to look this up. A VHS before it gives out. Maybe. Whatever. We'll see what pops up. Alright, converting VHS tapes to law. How did VHS tape... How much did Dude, these are real questions. How much did VHS tapes cost in the 90s? When did VHS become obsolete? Do VHS tapes wear out? How long can VHS tapes... How many times can you watch a VHS tape without it wearing out? Okay, this has got to be it, right?
You'd think. But this is going to be another one of these rabbit holes to where there's going to be a bunch of people arguing.
Maybe so.
I don't think there's an answer here.
Maybe so. Maybe so. It is a forum. Of course, this is a 2010 forum. How many times can you watch a VHS one? Alright. And before anyone says you should upgrade to a DVD player, I have a DVD player. Somewhere. But how many times can you watch a VHS tape without it wearing out on you? I have quite a few tapes that I'm pretty fond of, and they are pretty high priced on DVD, and don't want to waste my money on this sort of... Okay, depends on the condition of the VCR, blah, 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 blah. This is not what I want. This is not what I want at all. This is not what I want. Nope. Nope.
Holy shit, dude, I found a forum from 2003.
Wait, are you looking it up too?
Yeah. This website is called funtrivia.com. Jesus, it's like one of the first few websites.
Okay, how much VHS... Obviously, do VHS tapes wear out? They don't last forever, and many are quickly wearing away. Good Housekeeping reports. Technology that uses magnetic strips isn't very durable, since the tape loses magnetism over time. So most tapes are expected to wear out after 15 to 20 years. So even if you didn't watch it all the time, it's supposed to wear out 15 to 20 years. They were doing this before iPhone, like before Apple making their shit wear out on purpose. Okay, magnetic tapes stored well. If they're stored well, they will experience 10 to 20% signal loss purely from magnetic remnants decay after 10 to 25 years. But this isn't telling me how many times I can watch it. Because watching it...
I'm reading about a guy saying that after 50 times you start to get fuzziness.
50 times.
Yeah.
I wonder what... But fuzziness? I mean, come on. Like, how many movies have you watched through fuzziness? Or like you had a crinkled part of the tape where it fucked up for a minute and you just had to deal with it, and then I just wonder how long like you can watch it before it's no good anymore. Like how many times?
I mean, let's say 250 until it's so bad that it's not worth it.
250? 250 times?
Yeah.
That's just your guess there, right? Like,
I mean, well, you consider, when you're wearing out a tape, it's a movie you watch maybe multiple times per day when you're a kid, because that's your life now.
Something I've always thought about this, like when I think about it, is that I think being honest, that people exaggerate how many times they've watched a movie. Like, sometimes I'll look back and I'll be like, dude, I had...
being a kid I watched the movie Kickboxer. I wore that out. I literally watched that every day.
Well, you ever talk...
probably a solid year.
You ever talk to people and they're like, dude, I must have watched that hundreds of times, like whatever it is. And then you're thinking about it, like, how many hours is that? How much time is that? How could they possibly have had that much time? You know what I mean? Did they really watch it all? Or did they watch a little bit, turn it off, and never come back to it? And then, like, a couple weeks later, turn it... You know what I mean? Did they really watch it 100 times? 100 times? 200 hours watching one film. Like, it seems a little ridiculous when you...
But
I think people imagine...
You listened to one podcast for 30 hours this week.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But did I watch them? But did I listen to them over the same ones over and over? You know what I mean?
But I mean, you're also not as I don't know, as stuck on it as a kid would be. When you're younger, like I put more credibility in it. If you were younger and you watch the same thing hundreds of times, my kids will watch the same videos of them opening a toy. They know what the fuck's in it, but they'll still watch it.
Yeah, it's true. No, I agree, because now there's no way, like, there's movies I've seen a few times, and it feels like enough.
Yeah.
But there's also, it seems like, unlimited options now, and it seemed like when we were kids, even in the 90s, there probably was unlimited options, but it didn't feel like it. It felt like there were a handful of movies, and we picked some, and we really liked them, and we watched them over and over again. But, like... There are some that I watched over and over and over. But I think back now and I'm like, how is that even possible? How did I really have the time? What, summer vacation maybe? To wear out a tape? Did I watch it every morning? Like Ninja Turtles and Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze, okay? I watched both of those movies so many times that in my head, you know, memory's not really very accountable. Like, they say it's not good at all, and like remembering things, it's not accurate at all. To me, I felt like there was a span where I got up before my parents did, right? Like, I picture it in my head, I got up before they did and watched the same movie over and over and over again. Like, day after day, I would get up before they got up and watch these movies. But I'm like, wait a minute. That's not right, because my parents did have jobs and lives and shit. Like, they got up before I did on most days. Most days I had school, so when the fuck was I watching this 600 times? Like, in my head, I watched it so many times, it took up a significant portion of my childhood. But, like, then I realized there's other movies I've watched that many times too. Like, how is that even possible?
It's probably just like one summer imprinted itself on your brain to where you're blowing that up to like a major part of your childhood.
Dude, I bet you're right.
I mean, maybe.
No, I bet you're
Maybe
right.
It's probably like one summer you went really hard on that, and then that's part of your overall.
I 1000% think you're right. I think that's what it must have been. Because otherwise, it doesn't make sense either. Like, did I watch it so many times throughout my childhood? Like, there's no fucking way, because you're into different shit at different times. I don't know, it just seems like, it feels like I watched those movies hundreds of times. But also, hundreds of times, that's what I'm saying, like, our mind makes it like, oh, I must have watched that 150, 200 times. But maybe you really only watched it 30 times, you know what I mean? Because 30 times is a fucking lot of time to watch one film. You know what I mean? That is a ton of time that your brain is using to watch that fucking movie. I feel like that's probably what it is more than anything. Like, your brain makes it way more than... You might have seen it 7 times, and it feels like you watched it 50 times, but no, you didn't. You just... When you're a kid, you don't fucking... For one thing, you don't get time. You just really don't get it till you grow up and you're like, oh.
Well, and you also have to consider the amount of attention.
Yeah, it was different.
For your favorite line, and then it kept playing in the background. I mean, you may have been multitasking. You may have been drawing a comic while it was on in the background. And that was you watching it one time.
Oh yeah, for sure. And there was a.
It was like the background of your days.
Yeah, I think people exaggerate too. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think most of the time, if you've seen a movie a few times, you're multitasking while you're watching it all of the other times. Every single other time you're watching. You've seen it 3 times all the way through without interruption. All those other times you're doing other shit. For sure. For sure. There's no doubt, because I remember specifically doing it. Like, I was watching Ninja Turtles while drawing Ninja Turtles, so I wasn't fully into that. And also, like, probably my parents woke up and they wanted to turn the news on, so I had to turn it off. Like, you didn't really sit through the whole thing. Half of my viewings, at least, were when I was going to bed at night, I'd put a movie on. And I'd fall asleep probably 20, 30 minutes in. You know what I mean? But I probably count that as a viewing. Like, in my head now, I'm like, yeah, that's a viewing. But really, it wasn't. I only watched 20 minutes of it, and then I passed out. And I woke up to a fucking blank screen. So, yeah, that's probably true. Alright. Is there anything else we want to get to? We're at an hour and 16 minutes right now.
Yeah, I think for a Sunday night, that's about it, man.
Yeah, considering.
But hey, it's good that you switched your schedule around. Maybe get to this Saturday night next week.
Yeah, I'm hoping a Friday or Saturday night next week, because yeah, that's one thing I didn't talk about. But like, I almost didn't do this because this whole week has been. I switched my schedule to where I was working nights. I'd go in at like 6 p.m. and basically work till like 4 or 5 a.m. And it was absolutely miserable. Like, I couldn't watch. I'm trying to finish Game of Thrones. I couldn't do that. I'm trying to. I knew this podcast was coming up on the weekend. I'm like, how am I going to fit that in? Luckily today I ended up with the day off. But yeah, it absolutely sucked. I don't want to do it, so I'm going to try to switch it up. So hopefully this can be a regular thing.
Yep. Hopefully. Well, I mean, now you know. So maybe you won't get that idea again in the near future.
it's unlikely. I mean, I change my shit.
You would always be thinking in the back of your mind, like, you know what? I bet if I did this at night, it'd be a better experience. But at least you tried, and you know. Yes,
now I know that if I do that, I won't be able to fit the podcast in adequately. This thing is gonna.
And if you can't do that, what are you doing with your life in general? I mean, what the fuck, man?
But this is one of the things that I was inspired by on that What Say You podcast. Is like, they were doing it. They had a busy as fuck schedule. They're doing like Impractical Jokers. They're doing the Tenderloins tour. They're like touring and doing all kinds of shit. And they were still making it work. Like, finding that time to do an hour podcast. And even though they didn't actually stick with it, it's inspiring, man. It's like, yeah, dude, you can make an hour to hang out with your friend for an hour every week. Like, 1 hour a week. That shouldn't be a problem. So, hopefully we're going to continue doing this in the same fashion. And every weekend, there'll be a new episode to put up. No matter how lame and drawn out and full of rabbit hole talk. How weak the episode is. I feel like at least we'll do one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a habit, so
yeah.
At least we kept it going.
Is that what they say? 3 times? 3 times is a habit?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well,
yeah.
We'll continue the habit next week, and yeah, that's it.
All right, man.
Wait.
I'll just sign off.
Wait. I want
Same way I signed on.
Hold on. I want to do some business stuff. So I just want to tell all the listeners that there's like a million places to go and like follow what we're doing or when we release a new podcast or whatever. So there's a Twitter, which is at Podshit Nerdcast. Then there's a Facebook page, which is, just look up the Podshit Nerdcast. Then there's an Instagram, which is at the Podshit Nerdcast. And we're on SoundCloud. If you're listening to this on YouTube, we're also on SoundCloud. And if you're listening to this on SoundCloud, which you're probably not, because like 4 people are, we're also on YouTube with accompanied pictures if you like that sort of thing. So there's a lot of places to find us, and I'm hoping to also get us on, we have a Facebook page. I'm hoping to start uploading the episodes on there as well, directly to Facebook, and then also on some other platforms, maybe like Apple Podcasts and stuff like that. So maybe Stitcher. I don't know. I got to figure it all out. So thanks for listening.
I have an idea.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, okay, I'm not going to tell you the idea. I'm just going to tell you that I have an idea.
Okay.
And it's definitely some futuristic shit that could really make it interesting.
Okay.
But I'll discuss that with you later.
Like off the air?
I'm just saying, one of these weeks it's going to be completely different. But I'll discuss that with you later.
So you're
just something to look forward to.
So it's a
teaser. Something to look forward to.
A cliffhanger. You're fucking leaving a cliffhanger. Like we won't even. It'll be like one of those shows where like you don't even get it on the next episode. You gotta wait like 6, because on the next one they do a backstory instead for that episode, and then you gotta wait another week.
No, this is probably like next year type shit.
Oh my god! Why would you do that? Why would you do that to people?
Yeah, it's bad, dude. It's a long one. This is the long game I'm talking about.
Are you gonna talk about it with me off the air though, like this week, or I really gotta wait?
Yeah.
Okay.
I gotta tell you, because you gotta help me work out the logistics a little bit, but yeah.
Okay.
Eventually, it'd be cool.
All right. So we're working on something very secretive, but very futuristic and awesome, and hopefully in about a year or so we can actually talk about what we're gonna do. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Exactly.
This is the Podshit Nerdcast, and we'll see you in about a week.
Later.